Have you ever finished a long work week and just thought, thank goodness it's Friday? Or maybe you're counting down the days to your next vacation, dreaming of sandy beaches or mountain trails. We take weekends and time off for granted, like they're a natural part of life. But what if I told you that just a couple of generations ago, the idea of a weekend didn't even exist, and that paid vacation was a luxury reserved for the super rich? The free time you enjoy every week wasn't given. It was won. This is an incredible, untold story of how we fought for our right to rest. Before the mid-1800s, the rhythm of life was dictated by the seasons and the sun, especially for those in agriculture. You worked when there was light and rested when there wasn't. But then, the Industrial Revolution changed everything. Factories sprang up, and with them, a relentless demand for labor. People flooded into cities, trading fields for factory floors. The work schedule. It was brutal. We're talking 10 to 16 hours a day, 6 days a week. Sunday was often the only day off, and it was primarily for religious observance, not for leisure or family time. Imagine working from sunrise to sunset, day in and day out, in dangerous, exhausting conditions. There was no TGIF because Friday was just another grueling workday, leading into another one on Saturday. This wasn't just a job, it was your entire life. But humans can only be pushed so far. Workers began to realize that this new way of life was unsustainable and, frankly, inhumane. They weren't just cogs in a machine. They were people who deserved a life outside the factory walls. This growing discontent sparked one of the most important social movements in modern history, the labor movement. Small, brave groups of workers began organizing, demanding better conditions, safer workplaces, and, crucially, more time. They didn't just want to survive, they wanted to live. Their rallying cry was simple but powerful: 8 hours for work, 8 hours for work, and 8 hours for what we will. This wasn't a request for a holiday. It was a demand for a life. The struggle for the 8-hour day was long and often violent. Strikes, protests, and rallies were met with fierce opposition from factory owners, who saw shorter hours as a direct threat to their profits. They argued that workers would become lazy, that production would plummet, and that the entire economy would collapse. But the workers held firm. They understood that time was a form of freedom. Time to spend with family, time to pursue education, time for community, and time just to rest and recover. Across the country and around the world, the momentum grew. Slowly but surely, through decades of struggle, the idea of a standardized workday started to take hold. It was a massive victory, a fundamental shift in the balance of power between labor and capital. With the 8-hour day becoming more common, the next logical step was the weekend. But who do we thank for the 2-day break? Surprisingly, one of the key figures wasn't a union leader but a titan of industry: Henry Ford. In 1906, Ford did something revolutionary. He announced that his Ford Motor Company factories would close on both Saturdays and Sundays, and he would not cut his workers' pay. His fellow industrialists were shocked. They thought he was crazy. But Ford wasn't just being generous, he was being strategic. He had a brilliant insight. If his own workers had more free time and the same amount of money, what would they do? They would become consumers. They would need to travel, to go on outings, to buy goods. And what was the perfect product for a weekend getaway? A Ford Model T. Of course, Ford's logic was impeccable. He realized that a well-rested, happier workforce was also a more productive one. But more than that, he understood that creating a consumer class required giving people the time and money to consume. He famously said, "It is high time to rid ourselves of the notion that leisure for workmen is either lost time or a class privilege." His 5-day 40-hour workweek was a game changer. Other companies saw Ford's successes, productivity soared, and as employee turnover dropped in, they began to follow suit. The idea of the weekend as a time for leisure and consumption was born. It wasn't just a break from work. It was a new economic engine. The final piece of the puzzle was the paid vacation. For most of history, only the wealthy elite could afford to travel for pleasure. For the average worker, taking a week off meant a week without pay, a choice between a holiday and putting food on the table. But as unions grew stronger throughout the 20th century, they began to include paid time off in their contract negotiations. They argued that, just like a machine needs maintenance to run efficiently, a human worker needs extended periods of rest and rejuvenation to stay healthy and productive. It was a slow process, but by the mid-20th century, the concept of an annual paid vacation started to become a standard benefit for many workers, especially in Europe and North America. It represented the ultimate victory, the recognition that rest wasn't a luxury, but a fundamental right necessary for a dignified life. So, the next time you're packing for a trip, or simply enjoying a lazy Saturday morning, take a moment to remember the history behind it. Your free time is a hard-won legacy. It's as the result of over a century of struggle by ordinary people who dared to demand a better life. People who believed that life should be more than just endless work. They fought for the 8-hour day, they championed the weekend, and they negotiated for the vacation that you now enjoy. This legacy is a powerful reminder that the way we work and live isn't set in stone. It's something we can, and should, continue to shape for the better. What do you think the future of work and leisure will look like? Will we move to a 4-day work week? Let me know your thoughts down in the comments. I'd love to hear what you think. Thank you so much for watching and for joining me on this journey through history. If you found this story as fascinating as I do, please give this video a thumbs up and consider subscribing to the channel. For more deep dives into the stories that shape our world, ring that notification bell so you don't miss our next video. Until then, enjoy your well-deserved free time.